Man, the skybox looks so much cooler from the Railjack than it does from the Orbiter, doesn't it? It looks so much cooler. Hi, people. Hello, hello, folks. This is a bit of an opinion piece, and we're going to be talking about Railjack, which is, at this point, you know, not that much going on with Railjack. I'm gonna throw out my very personal opinion about the state of Railjack and where it should be going and what missteps have been made and stuff like that. And I am going to start off by just saying immediately that Railjack at launch, vanilla Railjack as it were when it came out, was a better game mode than Railjack is today. And not even by a little, by a lot. I understand that there were issues with the launch of Railjack. I understand that there were things that didn't work very well, and people didn't engage with the game mode the way that the developers wanted them to. I think they had some numbers out after a while that like only 1% of players had actually sort of constructed a Railjack and stuff like that. And they had so much planned for the future of the game revolving around Railjack to the point where kind of like, oh, that's not good because people need to have one. And there were a couple of things they did initially to make more people play Railjack. Among other things, you know, trim down some of the resource costs by a lot to make it cheaper and more accessible. Because when the game came out, it was prohibitively expensive to craft one. It was only like sort of available for very late game players. That's fine. That's fine. That's one thing. But it's a case of, and unfortunately, we've seen this so often with so many updates, and it's very unfortunate that this is the case. It's very unfortunate that this seems to be the normal development cycle of Warframe. Of the developers having a cool idea, they release it, the community is somewhat resistant to change or resistant to new things, and criticize it a lot, or don't want to engage with it, or don't even want to try it out, and the developers, unfortunately, not sticking to their guns. And you know, neutering things, trimming it down, making it something that is gonna be more palatable or whatever to the more vocal parts of the community who tend to, unfortunately, complain a lot. And as a result, we never really get those big cool changes that we want to get, because everything just gets neutered down. And it's gonna sound weird when I say this, because normally the big problem in most game dev is that the developers don't listen to their community and push through a lot of things that aren't very sort of popular or tone deaf or whatever. Warframe has the opposite problem in that it has a development team that listens too much to its community. I'm not sure I've ever seen any other dev team that engages as much with the community as the Warframe devs do, and actively participates in the debate around the game, and takes in like opinions from content creators, from the forums, from Reddit, from wherever, and genuinely listens to its community and cares about what its community wants. And normally, I would praise that. I would say that that's great. That's what a community or like a dev team should be doing. But ever so often, it also comes with the problem that the more vocal parts of the community, which typically tends to be the complainers, get a bit too much influence and a bit too much say-so in how the game progresses. And when it came to Railjack, a lot of people were like, I don't like this because this isn't what I want Warframe to be. This doesn't feel like Warframe to me. This is a different game mode, and this is like, I wanted to be a space ninja. I didn't want to be a space pilot. So, they didn't want to engage with it. And to sort of placate these people, and to sort of like get them on board because Railjack was needed for the planned future content, it almost became a situation where DE minimized how much you actually have to engage with the Railjack. They were like, alright, what if we make Railjack missions into something where you practically don't have to do Railjack at all? Would that be better? And it's so sad that that's what happened to the game. Because you see fragments of it left, what Railjack used to be. Typically in Grenier missions. Specifically Grenier missions that have like side objectives as well. So, well, let's go to Corm's Belt and let's just have a look at this. There are so many things that they added to like remove the team component of it, where you're supposed to be like, oh, an entire crew of people, and so many missteps. Now, number one, and this one I kind of like in a way, and that is that you have your crew. And as you can see here, your crew is good. Maybe a bit too good, so I don't even have to shoot. My crew is going to kill everything. Everything. But if I wanted to shoot, well, all I have to do is fire off these seeker missiles. And the problem here is that, like, nowadays, this is connected to my energy rather than just, you know, a resource. So you've already taken away... I can just do this. I can put down an energy pad. There. And now I can just fire these as much as I want to. You got infinite energy, basically. And there are other methods of, like, cheating with this. Such as using Lavos. He doesn't use energy, he uses cooldowns instead. Hildrin. She doesn't, you know, she just regenerates energy by herself at, like, absurd levels. So, okay. Now we've trivialized this part, the dogfighting. No longer exists, basically. No longer need to level up your gunnery to get access to this cannon, you just sort of have it. No longer multiple hazards when your ship gets shot at. Just one. So being an engineer and repairing stuff, it's not really, you know, the same thing anymore. Why would I craft energy? Why would I? There's no reason to. They halved the size of the Railjack. They made the Railjack smaller, so that you don't even have to move around on it. It's just not as fun as it used to be.
Archwing slingshot loaded. Tenno in the barrel.
So sad. I'm not even. Yeah, I know. I didn't aim. And it's like, it almost feels like they are apologizing for the existence of Railjack with these changes. Where they're like, yeah, we know, we're sorry. We're sorry that you have to play this for a couple of seconds. We apologize for it. Just hang in there. Just hang in there, and you don't have to play Railjack for more than a couple of seconds if you don't want to. When was the last time you were inside a Grenier ship and actually did this? and actually, you know, did what you were once supposed to do. I bet you don't even basically remember this game though. And unfortunately, like, that's sort of a consequence of the crewmates as well. I can get it. There was a matchmaking problem, especially in like the non-meta content, where eventually, when everyone has everything, there's just a few nodes that you farm. So that's where everyone's playing, and if you're not on those nodes, then you can't find a team. In that regard, like, having the active crew was a good thing. But it also means that you don't have to engage with the content. And man, I will die on the hill that the old avionics grid was better and a more fun and more sort of like engaging system than the Plexus that they replaced it with, which is just normal mod system, but for Railjack. It just doesn't feel as exciting. They took something that was interesting and new and replaced it with something that was just, here, this is what you recognize. This feels more like classic Warframe. We're sorry. We're sorry that we tried to build something new. We won't do that again. So at least in the Grenier missions, you still have this dichotomy of, like, different people should do different things. You have one guy on the team who's running around doing side objectives. Then you have another guy piloting, one guy manning the artillery cannon. And used to be one engineer, but engineers nowadays are like just pointless. You don't really need to have anyone running engineer anymore. So you had at least, you know, to some extent the same gameplay loop as was originally planned for these Railjack missions. But then they introduced Corpus Railjack, and Corpus Railjack was honestly a step back for the game mode. This is the epitome, I would say, of the developers apologizing to its players for the existence of Railjack. They introduced normal gameplay missions into the Railjack mission, so it was supposed to be a mix. So you should still feel like Warframe. Like, you have the Railjack part of the mission, and then you have the Warframe, so to speak, part of the mission. And I guess the idea was that it was gonna make it more accessible and feel more like something that, you know, people want to engage with. But the problem is that the way they implemented this, partly the actual Railjack portion of the mission is almost non-existent. It's not a 50-50 split. It's like 10% Railjack and 90% just normal mission. So what that means is that the actual Railjack portions, they just come across as a nuisance. It's just something that you have to get through before you can get to, you know, the actual mission, which is just more normal Warframe. And it's so sad because, like, these are lovingly created new tile sets. Look at this Venus skybox. It looks great. And if you go to, like, you know, the ice mines, stuff like that, they look gorgeous. If you compare, like, the ice mines in Corpus Railjack to, for example, the Europa and the winter planet there, and you can just see how much better everything looks now, how absolutely gorgeous the new tile set is. It's such a shame that you practically don't even get to see it. Almost not at all. Because you spend a millisecond in there, you run through it, you do the objective, you never look back. And look here, and they're doing some sort of research on an old awoken structure, and you got the Corpus, they've attached their stuff here, and there's like all of these cool sort of like tech things and awoken experiments, or awoken tech that the Corpus are doing experiments on. It looks fantastic. You don't really have any reason to pay attention to any of it or to interact with it. So sad. On these Corpus Railjack missions, I don't know if you knew this, but it has infinite enemies. So you see here, these 4 enemies spawned in. Well, my crew shot them down pretty quickly. But what happens is, when you shoot down those 4 enemies, look at there. The game spawns in 4 more enemies. And when you shoot those down, the game spawns in 4 more enemies. So, what this means is, you can't, you know, you can't deplete the enemy fighters. They're infinite, you're just gonna spawn in forever. So the game is sort of teaching you that fighting them is pointless. Fighting them is irrelevant, it is a waste of time. And in fact, you are incentivized to ignore them. You are incentivized to not interact with them, not engage with them, because engaging with them is pointless. You have no reason to do so. And that is from a design standpoint just so bad, honestly. Teaching your players that the right way to engage with this content is to not engage with it. Get through it as quickly as possible. Pretend it's not there. You are punished if you want to engage with it, because you just won't get any progress. So what people do is they do this first part and get through all of the objectives as quickly as they possibly can, because you have no reason to interact with it. And once you have done your very, very fast side objectives, usually they're done in like, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, and then you can go and do the actual mission. And there are some endless missions in there. There's stuff like survival, defense, or fix. Right? So you can spend 20 minutes inside of this ship here. Before it was like 30 seconds of Railjack. 30 seconds of Railjack, 20 minutes of Warframe. That is what Corpus Railjack feels like. And it's such a step back, because the game is teaching me to not like Railjack. Straight up, the game is teaching me to feel like the Railjack sections of the game are an annoyance. There's other problems that also have to do with accessibility and things like that. Right now I'm playing solo, so I'm in my Railjack, but that's random now. That's random. You used to be able to choose to be the host, to choose to run with your Railjack. You can't do that anymore. Unless you have like a pre-built squad or anything. So I love my Railjack. I've invested in my Railjack. My Railjack is fantastic. My Railjack is like maxed out. It is a beautiful work of art. But very rarely do I get to play with it. Because nowadays, when you join a public game, it's just, you know, it can be whoever. There were people who enjoyed, you know, people with potato internet. They enjoyed being able to choose to not be the host, because that just screws everyone else over. People have been asking for many years, just in normal gameplay as well, for an option to choose to not be the host. But now, it's like, I'm not as incentivized to care about my Railjack anymore, because I don't get to play with it when I want to play with it. I only get to use my Railjack, you know, 25% of the time in public games. Otherwise, I just get thrown into someone else's Railjack. So, You're not incentivized to care about your Railjack or build up your Railjack anymore, because you can just roll with other people's stuff. And you can't choose to not do it. It used to be that the captain had control of the navigation screen, so you were sort of incentivized to work as a team, and you communicated with other people when you were the captain. You asked them what they wanted to do. Now they've given control of this console to everyone, which means that whoever wants to do whatever, if you want to keep playing, you gotta be the first on the console. If you want to go back to dry dock, you gotta be the first on the console. So it's become a race to get to this button at the end of the mission, so that you don't feel like you're gonna get screwed over. Which is, you know, again, it incentivizes you to not teamwork. It incentivizes you to be selfish and only think of yourself. And in 99% of the time, people are gonna run to that button and they're gonna press dry dock, and they're just gonna go back home. Don't understand really why they instated that change where you can no longer choose to be the host. It was at the same time as they put dry docks in relays, so that might have something to do with it. When you can start a mission from a relay, so you can start a mission even if you don't own a Railjack, even if you don't own or have a dry dock in your dojo. That might be related to that might be part of the issue, that if you can start a Railjack mission despite not having a Railjack, but then you would be like the host, that wouldn't work. Maybe that has to do with it. I don't know. All I know is it used to be something you could do, and now it's not. Now, it's not all bad. They have added something lately that I really enjoy, and that is Void Storms, which is relic missions that you can finish in Railjack. They give great rewards, they give tons of credits, they give tons of endo, they give tons of other resources as well. So that's fun, even though, you know, people tend to stick with the fast ones. They run Skirmish, they run Exterminate. That's about it. You don't want to be stuck in the long ones. But that's fine. That's fine. That's the case for normal relic missions as well, where some are more popular than others. But in general, I'm gonna say that ever since Railjack was first introduced, they did a couple of good things with like Railjack Revisited and the quality of life improvements. But all of these sort of like major gameplay changes to how Railjack works, I feel have been a misstep. Especially Corpus Railjack, which took the game mode in the completely wrong direction. And it really, really feels like the developers are apologizing for the existence of Railjack and are trying to create ways to let people avoid interacting with it. Just look at the new war, where it was this big thing in previously, where it's like, oh, you have to have a Railjack, you have to have a Necromech, and that was always the intention, that all of these systems are supposed to come together and, you know, move away from content islands. Like, that was the good part about Corpus Railjack, where it's like, we're moving away from content islands, we're integrating everything, we're putting everything together. But then you got that 10-90 split, which is just not a good implementation of that. But look at the new war and the Railjack section of the new war, and it is over in a minute. It is over in a minute, to the point where that could have just been like a cutscene. And it makes me wonder what the original plans were for Railjack in the new war. Because some of the criticism that was levied against the new war was that it didn't feel like a war. It felt like the aftermath of a war, and we didn't get to see the actual war. And I think part of that is because people were not into Railjack, or the people who weren't into Railjack were very loud and got a lot of that content cut. to the point where they probably rewrote big parts of the new war based on Railjack feedback. I'm gonna guess. That's my crazy conspiracy theory. And I wonder what could have been. I wonder what the new war could have been if the devs have listened a bit less to parts of the community. We might have been better off for it if they had just stuck to their guns and stuck to their original vision of what Railjack was supposed to be in the context of this game. But what's done, it's done. It is what it is. Moving forward from here, I don't think they're gonna, like, backtrack on this again. I think what Railjack is now is pretty much what it's gonna be. Which unfortunately is a bit of a failed experiment that now takes up a pretty big chunk of the game. I'm hoping that we can see new focus on Railjack, even though I know it's a live service game. They always want something new. They always want to move on to the next big thing. That's how you get engagement. That's how you get new players. You create new stuff. You don't just go back on the old stuff and tinker with the old stuff because no one cares about the old stuff. We want new stuff all the time. New stuff, new stuff, new stuff. But I'm hoping that they can do that with Railjack, because I'm hoping that this old idea of integrating it in how Warframe works and just creating more depth to the game, it is a noble idea. It is a good idea. And I wish we can go back. I wish we can go back a bit to what Railjack used to be. If anything, just something concrete, I would like to see tweaks to how Corpus Railjack works. I would like to see, for example, that you can deplete enemy fighters. That they don't spawn in forever. That if you kill enough of them, you get like a radio message to like, well, hey man, we are currently out of reinforcements. We can't send anymore. They'd have to be teleported in, I don't know, from further away, and that's gonna take a while. So for now, guys, you're on your own. Just something like that, so that you have a reason. You have a reason to shoot down enemy fighters. You have a reason to stick out in the Railjack section longer. And I wish they'd implement stuff to make it take longer. Give us more side objectives, more stuff we have to do before we can get inside. Yeah, sure, the mission won't be over in 2 minutes. The mission is gonna take longer. Okay, fine, so be it. Let the mission take longer. Every mission doesn't have to be over in 30 seconds. And then they're afraid that like, oh, but people wouldn't want to engage with these missions if they were more than 2 minutes long. It's like, well, maybe they will. Give them reasons to. I don't know, improve the rewards in that case. If the missions have to take longer, then give us better rewards for it. Make it worth our while, so that it feels like I'm getting the same rewards per minute, if that makes sense. I mean, that's how you do in the base game, right? No one plays capture missions, because capture missions don't give you any end of mission rewards. You play stuff like defense or survival and stuff, because the rewards are better. Do the same thing with Railjack. Make it worth our while to spend the time in there, and we're gonna spend the time in there. This isn't rocket science. Anywho, rant over. Rant over. Let me know, people. How do you feel about Railjack? How do you feel about current Railjack compared to old Railjack? What was better? What was worse? What changes since the original iteration do you feel have been in the right direction? And what changes do you feel have been a misstep? Let me know. Let the other commenters know. Who knows? Who knows who's going to watch this video? Who knows who is going to read this comment section? Make your voice heard, people. How do you feel about Railjack? What can be done? And thank you for watching. We're going to be back again tomorrow with something completely different.